We turn now to the growing level of economic uncertainty surrounding the North American auto industry. The big three are navigating a new era as they deal with the impact of President Trump's tariff.
They had initially said likely a $4 to $5 billion hit throughout the year to their profit.
America's auto sector was supposed to thrive under new tariffs. The White House promised factories humming again, with Detroit's big three leading the charge. Yet the reality feels very different. Rising costs are squeezing margins, supply chains are uncertain, and investment decisions are slowing down. While U.S. production struggles to find stability, Canada looks increasingly attractive. With CUSMA protections still in place, vehicles built north of the border can reach American buyers without the same risks. It raises a compelling question. If the next billion-dollar assembly lines are not built in Michigan or Ohio, could they be rising in Ontario instead? Suppose GM, Ford, and Stellantis decided to expand in Canada. What impact would that have on the North American auto supply chain? Let's find out. Just recently, the fragility of America's investment climate was exposed at Hyundai's new electric vehicle battery plant in Georgia. Immigration agents detained nearly 500 specialized workers, halting construction on a $7 billion project. Costs mounted, deadlines slipped, and an effort meant to create thousands of jobs turned into a cautionary tale. For automakers, this was a wake-up call. Tariffs already push up prices for steel, aluminum, and imported parts. Now, immigration crackdowns are adding another layer of risk, making it harder to find and retain the skilled labor that factories need. Instead of an open door, executives see a moving target. Canada offers a different picture. Under CUSMA, Canadian-built vehicles keep their privileged access to the U.S. market. Ottawa's more open immigration approach also makes it easier to bring in skilled workers when shortages emerge. On top of that, Ontario has attracted billions in battery and EV supply chain projects, creating a ready ecosystem. The contrast is clear: instability on one side of the border, predictability on the other. Now imagine that General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis each decide to expand in Canada instead of the United States. A modern assembly line employs 2,000 to 3,000 workers and produces around 200,000 vehicles per year. At an average factory gate price of $30,000 per car, that is about $6 billion of output per plant each year. If all three shifted their next projects north, the United States would lose 6,000 to 9,000 direct factory jobs. Because every assembly job supports several more in suppliers, trucking, and local businesses, the wider loss could exceed 50,000 jobs nationwide. The missed production would be worth roughly $18 billion annually. For Canada, those numbers translate into gains. 6,000 to 9,000 new factory jobs would anchor communities in Ontario and beyond. When the multipliers are counted, the economy could add 50,000 to 60,000 jobs. Canadian auto output, worth about $14 billion only a few years ago, could surge by another $18 billion in a single year. What Washington's policies push away, Ottawa's stability could pull in. The lesson is straightforward. Tariffs that raise costs and immigration policies that shrink the workforce may not bring factories back. They may push factories across the border. Canada's appeal lies not in offering something flashy, but in offering certainty. For the U.S., the choice is whether to adjust course. Stable trade rules and practical workforce policies could restore confidence. For Canada, the opportunity is to build on its CUSMA advantages and ensure its labor and supply base can meet demand. Factories go where the path is clear. If America continues to close doors, then the next wave of North American auto investment may roll north, and the engines of Detroit's future could be heard humming in Ontario.
At some point, his view is maybe a tariff is better than a deal.
Michigan's governor has directly raised the alarm with President Donald Trump after the damage his tariffs will do to the auto sector in America's car capital.
In Michigan, the heart of America's auto industry, the pressure is building. Over the summer, President Donald Trump's latest tariff measures have landed with force, and the numbers tell a sobering story. General Motors reported its second quarter profits fell by $1 billion, attributing much of the decline to new import taxes. Stellantis said it lost $2.7 billion in the first half of 2025, also pointing to tariffs as a major factor. Ford's latest results are expected soon, but analysts already anticipate the same pattern. Trump has pitched these tariffs as a way to bring manufacturing back to the United States. Yet in Detroit and across Michigan, the early impact is hard to miss. Rising costs, squeezed margins, and a growing unease that these measures may be hitting home harder than they are hitting foreign competitors.
The new import taxes rolled out in the last several months could lead to more factory floor job losses, price hikes, and lower profits.
The problem starts with the basics of production. Since June 2025, imported steel and aluminum, critical for vehicle frames, chassis, and countless components, have carried a 50% tariff. Canada, the largest aluminum supplier to the United States, is now facing a 35% rate on non-USMCA goods as of August 1st. Mexico, though given a 90-day delay on new tariffs, still faces the threat of 50% duties on certain metals and auto parts if talks fail. Outside North America, India's rate has been raised to 50%, affecting some automotive parts and materials that U.S. manufacturers rely on. Even items far from the assembly line, leather, textiles, and interior trim imported from Asia, are caught in the net. The complexity of modern supply chains means that a car labeled "Made in America" can still depend on dozens of foreign-sourced elements. Many U.S.-based suppliers themselves import critical subcomponents, now taxed heavily before they ever reach a Michigan factory floor.
So far, auto companies have been eating the impacts of the tariffs, and that's what we're seeing in the latest profit reports. It's only a matter of time until the companies pass those costs off onto the customer.
At first, the Big Three absorbed these new costs, hoping to protect sales. But, according to the Center for Automotive Research, the 25% tariffs on autos and parts alone could add $108 billion to industry costs in 2025. That figure doesn't even account for the knock-on effects from 50% steel and aluminum duties, or the layered tariffs from multiple trading partners. The Alliance for Automotive Innovation warns that these costs will inevitably reach consumers. Higher sticker prices could push entry-level models off the market entirely, reducing choice and slowing the rollout of new technologies. Electric vehicle makers face an extra hurdle. The U.S. still lacks a large-scale domestic battery manufacturer, forcing reliance on imports that now carry steep tariffs. In Detroit, cutting production means more than fewer cars on the lot. It means fewer jobs, especially in communities that have spent decades rebuilding after past downturns. Analysts say the next 3 years could bring sustained declines in sales and employment if current policies stay in place. Trump sees tariffs as leverage to pressure trading partners into investing in the U.S. and opening their markets. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney, however, has stayed firm, keeping most Canadian exports tariff-free under USMCA and seeking new trade routes abroad. He maintains that the steep duties on Canadian metals and parts ultimately raise costs for U.S. consumers and manufacturers more than for Canada. It's a test of two strategies: Trump's high-pressure push for quick concessions versus Carney's long-term approach built on stability and alliances. For America's auto sector, the outcome will shape whether these policies deliver stronger domestic production or deepen the cost and job losses already taking hold in Michigan and beyond.
The headline here is Trump expands 50% steel and aluminum tariffs to include 407 additional product.
I got a problem with that guy. He's signing all these forms, Cleveland Cliffs.
President Donald Trump has once again expanded his trade war. The White House confirmed that tariffs of 50% on steel and aluminum now cover hundreds of additional products. What began with raw materials now includes car parts, refrigerators, baby strollers, even the aluminum in soda cans. For American families, this means higher grocery bills and more expensive cars. For U.S. partners like Canada, it disrupts exports that depend on metal packaging and industrial inputs.
And why doesn't he just stay in the U.S.? Because I'm done with this guy signing letters saying, yeah, bring all the steel down to the U.S., tariff the crap out of Canadians.
This is not just a technical trade measure. It is a shock that links everyday costs with international trade tensions. Let's take a closer look at what this expansion means inside the United States and across North America.
the Trump administration is quietly making it even more expensive to import hundreds of items that all of us would see on store shelves as well. A whole bunch of household items impacted, and some industrial items too. Look at this: cranes, bulldozers, wind turbines, rail cars.
For consumers, the most immediate effect is inflation. CNN's reporting highlighted that import prices rose sharply in July, defying the White House claim that foreign exporters would absorb the tariffs. Analysts such as Pantheon Economics stress that American businesses and households are carrying nearly all of the cost. That cost is not small. Supply chain experts have estimated that the expanded tariff list now covers around $320 billion of products, creating roughly $160 billion in extra expenses that flow directly into the economy. Industries tied to steel and aluminum are already reacting. Farmers and builders depend on tractors, gearboxes, pumps, and construction machinery now hit by higher tariffs. Legacy manufacturer John Deere recently announced layoffs at 3 Midwestern facilities, citing weaker sales and the impact of tariffs on production costs. When major employers respond this way, the shock spreads into local communities. The administration's stated goal is to rebuild American steel and aluminum. Yet investment in those sectors requires billions of dollars and long-term certainty. The process so far has been anything but certain. Economists describe it as a policy direction that may be defensible in theory but clumsy in execution. This uncertainty, now often called Trumpian uncertainty, discourages companies from expanding or hiring because tariff rules can change with little warning.
We aren't going to roll over. We aren't going to kiss his backside. We're going to fight like we've never fought before.
Trump's tariff expansion has not gone unanswered. Canada, America's closest trading partner, has pushed back on 2 tracks. At the public level, Ontario Premier Doug Ford has taken direct aim at Washington. He calls the tariffs a hidden tax on American families, noting that Canada buys more than $350 billion of U.S. goods each year. Ford announced a $70 million Canadian program to support workers, pressed Ottawa to tighten quotas on cheap steel, and made it clear Canada will not roll over. On the federal track, Prime Minister Mark Carney has chosen strategic patience. He has directed aid to sectors such as lumber and agriculture while keeping negotiations with Washington open. His government insists Canada will only accept a fair deal, not a short-term fix that weakens national interests. Ford and Carney show 2 sides of one response. Other provinces have also voiced strong opposition, while unions, industries, and policymakers align behind the same message. Canada is standing firm, defending its workers and industries, and refusing to be cornered into a bad deal. The expansion of steel and aluminum tariffs is more than a policy adjustment. For Americans, it means higher prices when inflation is already a concern. For businesses, it adds uncertainty that discourages long-term investment. For Canada, the answer has been resilience. Ottawa and the provinces are backing workers and reinforcing supply chains, sending a message that they will not accept a bad deal. Trump's strategy may unsettle markets, but it also reveals which partners are prepared to stand firm. The coming months will show whether these tariffs strengthen industry or simply confirm that trade wars rarely produce clear winners.